Greetings ladies and gents, and welcome to this video for Fork This Life, written by Jinxes 2011. This video contains chapter 36, and as always, by the time this ends, I hope you forking enjoy. And if you did, please consider subscribing. Chapter 36, Term 1, Forking Done. Now that I'm in the library itself, I can see what's around me with mana sight. Although only in the sections of the library. Almost instantly I see a poster listing the various rules of the library, including that you couldn't bring a lower year student with you through the doors, something not mentioned by Mr. Leish. There is only one student other than me in the section of the library, a young man with messy, oily brown hair and severely wrinkled robes, his attention occupied completely by the book in front of him. I began to peruse the titles of the books, trying to find one relevant to mana control. After about 10 minutes of searching, I give up, not able to find anything in particular, and many of these titles are too interesting to pass up a read. I pick one out, a brief overview of W.R.E, and carry it over to the table using telekinesis to read it. I position myself above the book and carefully turn the first page. Skipping the author's introduction, I get straight into the juice of it. W.R.E is unlike any other of the worlds. It does not focus on any known concept, energy, or weaponry, as so many others seem to, whilst most of the inhabitants speak common. Why is that, by the way? I'm on another forking planet, for Pete's sake, so why is everyone still speaking English? It's not like interplanetary colonization is a thing here. W.R.E displays a variety of languages, cultures, and people of power far beyond that of any other. Even the gods themselves appear to pay more attention to it than any other worlds. It goes on briefly and describes the various important countries and kingdoms on W.R.E. The Empire doesn't even get a mention. Too small, I guess. There are too many unique locations to mention, floating islands, underwater cities, endless deserts, but there is one worthy of particular mention, the most famous and feared location, perhaps across all the worlds. It is commonly known by two different names, the Plane of the Worlds and the Eternal Battlefield. It is said that there are naturally occurring portals to every world in existence hidden throughout the plane. Alas, few have been found and fewer still are safe to pass through. All the simple reason is that there are portals to both heaven and hell there. Heaven, hell. Did whoever named these places read the Bible, or did the Bible get it from them? Their war raged since times forgotten, and by all accounts, neither side is likely to stop. Many seeking fame and fortune have fought there, on either side, and many have fallen, some recorded being as powerful as level 80 range. Well, that sounds like a place I never want to go, but it may have a way back to Earth. After reading through it, I carry the book back to the shelf and find another to read. A book on the system catches my interest. How, why, and when has come to be unknown. Well, that's useless. I skimmed through several pages, but there is only one section in particular interest. Although there is no record of instances of such an occurrence, it has been hypothesized that a maximum level, if such a thing exists, is 100. However, it is doubtful if such a hypothesis will ever be confirmed. As one advances further in level, one will cease to receive experience from enemies more than a certain level below them. Initially 30 levels below, but decreasing to 10 or, some unconfirmed reports say, 5 levels below at the highest known levels. To even find an individual of 18 level range is prohibitively difficult, and to find someone who in the 90s is almost impossible, because they are almost mythical. Individuals in the 90 level range are sometimes known as legends, sometimes as skepticism, sometimes in awe. Not seeing anything else that's forthcoming, I slot the book back away too. Perhaps a brief inspection of known powers would be more my speed. A brief inspection of known powers, indeed. According to the table of contents, 90% of the book's contents are on mana. Mana is the foundation of all magic. Its uses are numerous, limited only to the individual wielder's skill, knowledge, power, and imagination. Present in anyone and everything, even untaught, an individual will be able to use mana to some degree. Well, that's not biased at all. Ki is a rarer power, but masters of the art say that it can be awoken in anyone, given enough time and effort spent on doing so. It allows users to perform extraordinary feats of strength. Those experienced in the arts can simply shrug off weaker weapons and magic. Nevertheless, it takes decades to become proficient in its use, and while it can be consumed quickly, replenishing Ki takes a long time. Interesting. Something to take another look at in the future, to be sure. It may take decades, but I have time. Psi, the power of the mind in its purest form, quite rare, and in many cases difficult to notice. Users specialize in affecting the mental states of themselves and others, as well as the silent communication. Battles between psychics are often imperceptible to the naked eye, but no less deadly for it. Someday, I'm sure I'll find out how to use Psi more effectively. With my stats being mostly distributed between intelligence and wisdom, I'm almost as spec towards Psi as I am towards mana. It'd be a waste not to use it. Fighting spirit is unlike mana and Ki in that it is not a power that dwells naturally within the body, and it cannot be consumed or produced. It is more a reflection of a warrior's state of mind. Here I say warrior because the fighting spirit most often arises in warriors, if at all. It has been described by many words: determination, perseverance, rage. Ultimately, it is simply the willingness to fight, no matter the cost to oneself. Individuals with fighting spirit can often fight through injury and fatigue, exert greater strength than others, and are resistant to mental manipulation and can, to some lesser extent, inspire the qualities in others. Let's be honest here, I'm not getting fighting spirit. If it wasn't for the fact that I can't feel pain, there was no way that I would be able to run into combat and injure myself so fearlessly. Killing intent, rather than the will to fight, is the will to kill. Wielders, without exception, kill for the sake of killing. Observed effects include inspired unnatural fear and weakness in targets, condensing weapons in only a truly depraved, creating bloody warriors to fight for them. Yeah, no. Divine power. The power of the gods, the limits of its uses, if there are any, are unknown. The most devout priests and paladins have some access to this power, allowing them to accomplish what can be best described as miracles. I wish. Divine power gets equal easy mode. No chance of that happening, I don't think. The last overview gives me a pause, and makes me feel like the world, already fantastical in nature, just got weirder. Superpowers. So rare and unique that they defy proper classification, and not information is known about them. It is known, however, that every superpower has some weakness or caveat. Perhaps the user tires at an extremely fast rate while using it, or it can only be used once in a blue moon. I wonder if I can gain a superpower through Absorb, and how rare are they exactly? Questions, questions, questions. The more I answer, the more I have. In hopes of more satisfying answers, I read on. We are introduced to our final teacher and class of the term the next day, Miss Kate, Magic Casting Techniques. When I first looked in the room, I thought someone had let her pet python escape, but it was just a teacher in a Salamia. It scared quite a few of the others, so that was somewhat amusing to watch. It appears as if the class will be about various techniques to use to cast magic, and figure out which will be the best for each of us to use. Well, we haven't gotten to the meat of the things yet, but I'm guessing that I'll be doing formations. It just sounds the most logical to me. The more conceptual something is, the more difficult it is for me to learn, in general. After the second day of classes is over, I head back to the library. So many books, so little time. Well, perhaps not, but the superficial information that we've been learning so far is far from enough to quench my interest in the arcane. In fact, I make it a habit to head to the library at the end of every day and read, practically until classes start the next day. Between that and Drea's own classes starting up, we rarely see each other for more than a couple dozen minutes a day. At the end of the week of classes, I am, as per usual, perusing the shelves of the library for another book of interest. I hear a voice behind me. "Do you have a particularly severe teacher or something?" I turned. "Sorry." The speaker is the same young man who was in here the first day. He always has been in here before me and is still here when I leave. It's almost as if the guy lives here. You've been in here every night reading. Nobody does that, not in their first term. If magic didn't keep this place clean, there would be a solid inch of dust everywhere in this section. He gestured to the spotless shelves from where he sits. A small stack of books piled onto the table in front of him. So do you have a particularly severe teacher? Nothing like that. One of my teachers thought that I should look in here for some help in mana control, so I guess that was the original cause for me coming here, I mused, but there were just too many interesting things to read. Couldn't help myself. Yeah, I was pretty surprised, he shrugs. Didn't think there'd be anything here but guff. Perhaps a few entry-level texts, but there's a surprising amount of general knowledge here. You like to read? Used to be pretty much all I did in my spare time, I reply. Helped settle me down somewhat when things went pear-shaped. Pear? He raises an eyebrow curiously. Right, I guess they don't have that here. It's a sweet fruit and it has curvy shape. He nods. Yeah, life seems to have a habit of throwing curveballs. Books distract. You learn and have fun at the same time. What's not to like? I know, right? I agree. By the way, do you live in the library or something? I've never seen you leave. Yeah, I do, he replies. Technically, I'm a junior librarian, so I have a small room off of the main complex of the library. It's quite convenient. I do leave occasionally, though. Gotta eat. Nice, I say appreciatively. You've been in the academy for a while, then. I guess you could say that, he shrugs. 8, nearly 9 years I've been here, longer than some of the teachers. He glances slightly at the pile of books, and I take that to mean that he wants to get back to reading. Well, nice to meet you. I'm Gerald, by the way. Raymond, he waves in response, already turning his head back to the book open in front of him. The term progresses slowly but surely. Apart from the veritable trove of information in the library, classes do teach a few interesting things as well. For example, the existence of certain languages, written and spoken, through which magic can be more easily cast. That is to say, casting magic through chanting is not just another form of imagination magic, although it can be as well. Magic is weird. So, you can cast magic through a language by using an inspiration or as a medium. Anyway, what this means is that I'll almost definitely want to learn one of these magical languages, since common just about as unmagical as it gets, apparently. One problem, the first section of the library doesn't have any books in those languages, so it looks like I'll have to wait until the second term to start on that. In what little time I'm not spending in the library, in classes or chatting with Drea, I do honestly try and improve my mana control, but I make very little progress. The proficiency gains are bearably noticeable, and it makes me think that I'm missing something in the way that I practice, but I have no clue as to what it might be. I've tried controlling as much mana as I can, and as little as I can, contorting, compressing, and spreading it in every shape my tiny metal mind can imagine. No noticeable improvement, so I put it at the back of my mind for now. I immerse myself in learning what I can, conversing with a few new friends, and a whole lot of reading. The calmness, the sheer regularity of the academic life, and the formality of it all lulls me into a sense that the world is a safe place, that I could learn here forever, and nothing bad would ever happen. I want it to be true. Some part of me wishes that I could believe it to be true, but I can't. I think back and I remember the vivid panoramic detail, those farmers risking their lives to reclaim their homes, the casual climbs right through the cities, their perpetrators walking free with a peace of mind, the devastation of the demons and the denizens of hell visit upon each other. That part of the world isn't about to go away just because I found a nice place. And even if the academy seems safe now, no place ever is, not after I died in my own home and some flash of light. No, even now I'm to do my best to get stronger. I'm not comfortable with others being able to decide my destiny on a mere whim. On Earth, even reaching the top of the food chain wasn't enough to guarantee your safety and security. But here, it's different. People are even more powerful, and so am I. I don't care about being the strongest. I am not some saint or a hero who aspires to fix all the world's problems, as if that was possible. But I am not going to let this life end like my last one did. Alone, helpless, and with the largest achievement to my name being a high score in a crappy, obscure video game. I don't know what I'll do, but whatever I do choose to do, I first need the ability to protect that lifestyle. Right now, magic is the best way to do that, despite the slow start. So I pay attention in the lessons, even when it gets boring. I listen and remember. It helps that I don't slowly nod off when things get dreary. Then of course comes the assignments, and I realize that I need to figure out a way to write, and fast. Getting supplies isn't difficult. The Academy has a store with the most basic supplies, so it's just a matter of utilizing my card for the first time. The paper, the ink themselves aren't particularly expensive, but I have to spend a bit more to get it delivered, because I can't really carry anything more than myself and the card. Once Andreas offers, he helps me carry it through the portal to his house. I'd made sure to pick the time that he wasn't teaching any class and would be available. From there, it's just me, a sheaf of paper and a jar of ink, all sitting on a table. I review my options. I could use self-manipulation, writing with the ink on one of my tines as if it were a finger. It wouldn't be too difficult to write like that. The problem is that I wouldn't have any good view of what I'll be writing, and that might make me prone to mistakes. A similar problem would exist if I were to wield myself telekinetically as a pen, and it might even be harder to write. Or I could probably just directly lift and apply ink with telekinesis. A little bit of ink barely weighs anything, so it shouldn't be a problem to keep myself aloft in controlling it, in terms of psi consumption. Since it seems to be the least likely to present any significant problems, I decide to test it out. Sending a tendril of psi, I attempt to lift a little bit of ink from the jar, only for it to plop back. Concentrating, I shape my psi into a miniature dish and dip it into the thing before lifting it up. No dice. Clearly my psi isn't watertight. I try again, focusing on keeping my psi as a single continuous membrane upon which droplets of ink could sit. This time a globule of ink remains suspended in the air, held by an invisible force. Success! But how was I to apply it? I couldn't exactly just splash it down onto the page after all. Then an idea came. If I could make my psi watertight, then could I make it airtight? It takes me several tries, but after finally getting the right shape, I lower my psychic contraption to the ink, then lift it up another portion. Like magic, the ink gets sucked upwards, leaving me with a thin tube of ink. Now, it's not invisible, but what I've done is adapted the needleless dropper, like the type that you might use to measure medicine if into a psychic construct. I push the plunger down and into the tube, expel the air, and then I draw it back to create some small suction force, drawing in the ink. Now I can easily and carefully apply the ink, and that page is ruined. One moment of lost concentration and all that I have to do is an ink blot. A good thing that I thought something like this might happen and have several pages prepared. Well, there's still some space left on this page that I can use to practice. It takes me a few hours of practice and some minor alterations to my psychic pen, mainly creating a sharper nib and the narrow end of the ink tube, until I manage to get the image steady enough that the ink output is the right rate and attempt to write. Then I encounter more problems. Not enough pressure on the page, too much pressure, not being able to sync up with my writing speed, with my ink output rate, and so on. I practice a few more hours with some improvements, but it still doesn't look much better than child scrolls. To be honest, my writing wasn't exactly pretty in my past life either. Unreadable by some people's standards, not that it mattered. Digital documents were a superior medium anyway. It's going slowly, and I'm not worried. I have more than a week until the stuff is due. Spin the rods in a manner clockwise, moving them in a counterclockwise spiral motion in front of you. Proper pronunciation is key. Repeat after me. 3 bees on wee trees did see 2 peas. And then it exploded, let me tell you. He was not expecting that. Soot in his hair for weeks. The proper classification and identification of magic is subject to a minor debate of this day, although most agree that it is not a perfect solution. The term nears an end, and before I can blink, literally, I still haven't tried testing the doppelganger skill. Quite a lot of it is the teachers hammering home the same information over and over in different ways. I guess they were really making sure we know the basics. Well, Mrs. Felt was an exception. Half the time she was just telling stories and jokes. Actually, now that I think about it, most of those stories involve someone messing up their magic. Maybe she wasn't so off topic after all. Of course, I figured out my writing problem. Well, mostly. I still end up with an ink splatter every now and again if I get distracted by someone, and my handwriting still isn't stellar. But it's workable. Results start coming in. I do well, naturally. If it's just theory and memory, it's an area of my expertise. We'll have to see how I get when it comes to the practical aspect of magic. Finally, the term ends and the academy grows quieter. It doesn't close, but many other students don't stay during the break period. I do. Where else would I go? Most of the time I spend in the library. Raymond isn't there. He stopped showing up around halfway through the term, said he'd finished reading everything of interest in the first section of the library and was going back to the other sections. I get the feeling there are only a few bookcases worth of books in this section, and I've read through most of them. Most of the ones left aren't very interesting or informative. Still, there's not a whole lot to do besides reading and practicing mana control, so here I am. I spend some time over the break discussing with Drea what units I should do in the next term. He's given me a fair idea as to what options I'll have, so I think I know what I'll do. But the final decision will be made on the day, when I have all the options in front of me. Before too long the letter comes, saying that I've passed my first term and will be welcome back for a second. On top of that, due to my exceptional results, my scholarship would continue, meaning that my fees for the units I take this term will be waived. Accompanying the letter is a card with another 2,000 row on it. Nice. I register my mana and transfer the cash to my original card, which I barely dipped into in the first place. The rest of the break I spend reading, at least until the auditorium gets busy with new students. At that point, I start mentally going back through my memories of all the lessons of my previous term, making sure it's all nice and fresh in my mind for the new term. Besides, maybe I'll notice something I missed. It happens quite often, actually. I'll have a huge visual range, but my mind can't go fast enough to catch all the details it sees. There might be a few dozen people talking at once in my area, but I might only be able to follow one conversation, for instance. So, it's all there in the memory. Going over it can reveal new information. Doing that all takes quite some time. Before I know it, it's time for the new term, and everyone is lining up for the assembly. It looks like maybe an eighth of the people who enrolled at the same time as me have dropped out, for whatever reason, and in front of us are a fresh new cohort. Although there aren't any announcements that pique my interest, I at least recognized a few more of the staff members and teachers. After it all finished, we were all led off to choose our classes. I noticed the older years heading off in the different directions. They must choose their classes elsewhere. We ourselves are led into a very large room with what looks like it might normally be a workshop of some kind. And then the teachers there start handing everyone lists of all the possible classes we can take. I end up having to hold it in front of me with telekinesis, as all the benches and tables immediately get swooped up. Their list is more extensive than I had realized. Most every class is a basic level class, which is exception for advanced mana control. Still, I want to start with some simpler, more straightforward things before I try something like artificing or alchemy. And even though I spent most of the last term reading past the time, I think I'm going to go with just 4 classes, just in case they are more demanding than I expect. Besides, I should have more access to the library this time, so there should be much more interesting things for me to read. Let's see. If I'm starting with the basics, then of course I'm going to go with this one. This one should be good too, and this. Now that I think about it, doesn't this have way more applications than the typical ones? Just thinking about it scares me. And last of all, may well do this. Should let me do the next level next term. Might be helpful later on. End of chapter. And that, my friends, is the end of the video. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, please consider supporting the author from the links down below. And if you'd like to support this channel, there are numerous ways listed down below. The easiest of which would be to share this channel, subscribe, like and comment, and all the other stuff that Google wants us to push. But anyways, until the next video, I hope that you all have a good one, and I'll see you then. Cheers.